Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Shiny Show. I finally have all 8 beautiful volumes of Heaven Official's Blessing. I will show you them one at a time real quick so you can appreciate the cover as much as I appreciate the covers. I so want like the illustrated, there's like the new hardcover illustrated editions that have been coming up. I want those. I'll get those ones as like my display one, like my read one and then display. But to show you the beautiful paperbacks, because these ones deserve as much love. To show you the beautiful paperbacks, volume 1, the original that started it all. And I'm gonna set this, actually I need to put them back on my bookshelf in the right spot. So temporarily volume 1 is gonna be on my bookshelf. Volume 2, beautiful. I love how they look next to each other on my bookshelf. I'll show you that in a minute too. Volume 3 are babies. We love them so much. Oh, was it volume 2 or volume 3 did I do? I don't think I did volume 4. Trying to figure out which one I did. Okay, it might have been volume 3 then, because I think that's what I was reading at Anime Expo. Oh, it was right, it was at the back. I was looking in the front. So volume 3, again, volume 3. Okay, we're okay. Volume 3, I was reading this at Anime Expo 2024, and I got it signed by one of the artists. So the artists for the series are, the cover and color illustrations are by Ty3_3, and then the interior illustrations are by Zelda CW, and that's who I got this signed by. So that's Zelda CW's. Maybe I'll get all these signed by her at one point, but we'll see. So again, this is volume 3. Or no, volume 2. I got it mixed up. Do I have it? Yeah, volume 2, volume 3. I got it mixed up on my shelf. And then I did this part out of order. Sort of out of order. Jeez, we are sort of a mess today. Volume 4, and I've read up until this point, and that is also the point of this reading vlog, which I'll also go over in a couple minutes, maybe a minute, we'll see. Volume 5, so this is sort of where I'll be starting off. Volume 6, Volume 7. I love the babies. Love them so much. And then volume 8. I got this one recently. I had to order it through the Barnes & Noble app. So that is it for the series. Or at least the physical books. I have started volume 1. And the whole point of this is that I'm doing it, like you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, I'm doing a series read through. So I'm starting with volume 1 and going all the way through volume 8. So that's, I have like the back-to-back aspect of it. And there's that understanding. So I've read the prologue. Is it called the prologue? Yeah, the prologue, Heaven Official's Blessing. About to start chapter 1, The Scrap Immortal, the third time entering the Heavenly Capital. And this is page 23. Honestly, I love them. They need to be happy. I need them to be happy at the end of the day. I know they are. I know they're going to be happy. I mean, I have just slightly spoiled myself. So, we're starting with volume 1, and they're going to be happy in the end. So, there's that. And something else I will say as well before we get in too deep. One moment. I love how I said, like, let me say something, and I was like, hold on a minute, and then paused recording. But I want to say that I'm not going to really spoil too much here. If anything, if I need to talk anything, I'll try to talk more generically about it. But I'm not going to be too spoilery about it, but at the same time, I'm not going to avoid talking about spoilers in this reading vlog, because this is a series read-through. So I'm not going to outright avoid spoilers, avoid discussing them in this video. So just forewarning going into this, if you have not read the series, this will be a spoilery series. If you've not watched the anime, this will be slightly spoilery as well. So just be forewarned going into this, because again, I'm not going to be like outright spoiling every little thing, but I'm also not going to avoid talking about spoilers. So, and I think I talked about this before on my channel, where it's like, for me, the way I see spoilers, if we're talking about the book specifically, the way I see spoilers is if you're looking at a book series, like what we're reading here, is that if it's 3 or more volumes, the first 2 volumes are not as spoiler. If the series is a trilogy or longer. And like the second book is spoilers, but it's not as spoilery as the third book or later if it's a longer series. So be aware going into this, like first and second book not going to be as spoilery, first and second novel not going to be as spoilery or spoiler heavy, but anything later than the third book is going to be more spoiler heavy. Again, like I'm not going to outright say anything, but I'm not going to avoid talking about it. I'm not going to put disclaimers here, because again, this is a series read through. I'm not going to put any disclaimers when I'm talking about spoilers, just for time and energy. So just be aware going into this. This will be spoilery. But with all that said, I think the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to let you know when I finish a book, when I'm starting a novel, and then when I'm finishing it, instead of like letting you know slightly play by play within the novels themselves. I'll just let you know when I've started and finished. I don't have any highlighters, but I might get some highlighters at some point to start highlighting stuff, so that then it can maybe be a little bit easier to talk about stuff at the end of the book. So that's probably something I'll do. I'll probably get highlighters. And then we'll just go from there. Anyway, I'll see you all in my next episode. Okay, so this isn't really an official update, it's just a little check-in. First off, well, I'm only showing one, but it's a Punching Pumpkin pen. Initially I got 3 of these. I got one for myself, which is currently at my work. This one is for my friend. I'm just gonna include it in our Christmas gift at this point. And then I got a 3rd one for my sister, and then 2 more arrived. The other 2 are in my bag currently. I got 2 more, and those ones are gonna go to my boss and my colleague. And just because when I showed them this, like, we all had a great time with it. I still have a great time with it. Anyway, so I got this. I got 2 more for my boss and my colleague. And then that also came with these highlighters. And these are the midliner, which are ones that I'm really liking. The midliner, the zebra. Did I just say it the British way? The zebra midliner highlighters. And these are the ones that, let me show you just because I'll be using this one. So it has a thicker point right there on one end, and then the other end is the thin point. So, and because I mentioned earlier getting highlights and highlighting, this is also why it's the check-in. I got to maybe chapter 2, and since I'm not that far in, I am backtracking, and I'm just going to do a quick little read through, see if there's anything I want to highlight, I want to get through. And also, boy, it is October. I think I started this like close to 10 days ago. It's October 14th now. I started this October 10th. It's been like a little bit of a weird reading mood for me right now. And in a week, roughly, I will be going to Disneyland. So I will be at Disneyland October 23rd and 24th. No, wait. Is it the 23rd and 24th? Yeah, I'll be at Disneyland October 23rd and 24th. And we have our hotel, it's my sister and I. And we have our hotel stay the 22nd and 23rd. This is coming out way after, but I'm just letting you know in context in the moment of what I'm recording right now. I was thinking of bringing a book with me, but at this point, I don't think I'm going to get to any book. So, yeah, there's not going to be much reading done between then. So I'm going to try to get through a good chunk of this before then, within this week before Disney. And we'll see if I have an update for you before then. And if not, it's not a big deal. The Disneyland videos are already up by the time this is up. They've been up for a few months now. Again, I don't, as of right now when I'm recording this, I do not know when this video is going up. So, yeah. But at this point, the Disneyland videos are already up. They went up in November, at the end of November. So, again, I don't know when this video is going up because this is focusing on all of the Heaven Officials Blessing series. And this actually also gave me, did I put it back? Are you kidding me? I keep putting the highlighter back when this is the one I'm using. And this also gave me, doing this also gave me inspiration to do this for some of the others, specifically some of my shorter series. And I'm thinking like Yashahime, doing a read through of that Fruits Basket, even though it's not short, once I have the full Fruits Basket series. And then also Inuyasha, maybe Delicious in Dungeon, maybe Magic Knight Rare Earth. We'll see. If I do those in the future, you'll know whenever they go up. So, yeah, that's my update for right now. And I'll see you all with the official updates once I'm done with Heaven Officials Blessing Volume 1. Okay, it is October 19th. It's been about 14 days since I started this, so 2 weeks. And I'm actually kind of glad I finished this first volume here, like right before my Disney trip. I think I talked about my upcoming Disney trip. Okay, that's dying, I guess. Let me actually charge it real quick. I'm gonna keep recording just to get my thoughts out there since I've just finished this. But like I was saying, I'm kind of glad I finished it before my Disney trip, so that like, just so that there's like a sense of movement with this. But I have finished volume 1 of Heaven Officials Blessing. I loved it just as much. I loved it as I loved it just as much as I loved it the first time. Words have been kind of hard for me today. I recorded another video earlier today. And I also baked cookies for my Disneyland trip, and I also had to clean up a couple of my rooms. So it's been a long day. But back to business. I have finished volume 1, and as I said, I loved it just as much as I loved it the first read through. And like, it was pretty easy. Like, I wasn't really skimming through it because I'm trying to read intentionally here, since I'm trying to have the information as fresh as possible for once I get to the volumes I haven't read, which will start at volume 5. So it was a quick read. I wasn't skimming through it. I was trying to read deliberately, but it was a quick read because a lot of it was pretty close to the donghua, which is it's not traditionally it's not a Japanese anime, it's a donghua, which is like the Chinese equivalent, and that's pretty close to the original novels. So it's been so long since I've loved a show so much that as much as I love the donghua a book series as much as I love this, it's been a while. So it's really exciting that I am loving this so much. So I do have a couple of notes that I want to talk about in regards to volume 1, and any notes that I mention in regards to the individual volumes are mentioned down below. I just mentioned them by chapter and then page number. So and I'm going to talk about them here in this video. So spoilers ahead just for the rest of this video. I'm gonna try to talk about some not so spoilery notes in this video, but as I get later on down the series, especially like volume 3 and 4 and so on, it is going to get more spoilery. I'm going to try to keep it as like the more low-key spoilers that aren't like massive plot points, and if I feel like I need to talk about massive plot points, I'll be kind of vague about them, but I'm going to try to focus on the less pivotal spoilers. So that's the plan for this. So I have like 4, and I'm going to try to not talk about too many different things. I'm going to focus on like 3 to 5 notes per volume. And for volume 1, I have 4 notes for this. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is at the start of chapter 2. It's literally the start of chapter 2, page 47. I'm just going to that. And this one really stuck out to me. This part really stuck out to me. Just given our current political climate in the United States and so much that goes on with the government, both on a local level, on a state provincial level, and then on the federal level. So let's see. So it's talking about like the disappearances of the brides, and just to quote it, ever since then, things have gone out of control. Less than 100 years after the first incident, there had been a total of 17 brides who went missing in the Mount Eugene area. Sometimes there'd be a couple decades of peace, and sometimes 2 would go missing in the short span of 1 month. A horrific legend quickly spread of a ghost groom who lived on Mount Eugene, and if a woman caught his eye, he would kidnap her on the road and devour the marriage procession. Ordinarily, this affair wouldn't have been reported to the heavens. Although 17 brides had gone missing, there were thousands more who were perfectly fine. And to skip ahead a little bit, or no, I'm not actually. Either way, the girls couldn't be found, and they couldn't be protected, even if everyone wanted to do so. They could only make do with the status quo. Now there were fewer families willing to marry their daughters into this area, and the locals didn't dare make a fanfare of their weddings. That was all. But it just so happened that the father of the 17th bride was a lord official who doted on his daughter. When he heard of the local legend, he meticulously selected 40 valiant, valiant and capable military officials to escort the marriage procession of his daughter, but the daughter was spirited off anyway. So like that, I feel like that's such like an important commentary, not just on like that specific situation that was going on, but just like what happens with victims, especially like women victims. And like we say it like all the time, like there's so many reasons why women don't report SA, why they don't report harassment, why they don't report X, Y, and Z, why they don't tell family members if another one's being weird. You know, there's so many instances where women or girls do not say anything because they fear the repercussions, because whatever authority in their lives, whether it's family or government, there's a good chance that nothing will happen because of it. And there's also a good possibility that they'll be shamed for reporting and being like, okay, what were you wearing? What were you doing? Were you drinking? Were you flaunting? Were you flirting? Like, what were you doing? Like, victim blaming. So it's like, I feel like that whole section is so poignant, just like to our current political climate and social climate, and just even times leading up to it. And it's not just women, like it's minorities as well, like why so many don't report. So it's like anyway, so the next one is chapter 6, page 175. Once I can get to that. 175. Oh. Okay, so something I want to say before I note, I think I mentioned it earlier, I want to get like the deluxe hardback, or not the deluxe, the hardback illustrated editions, just as like my display ones, because you can kind of see I'm really trying not to damage these books, but it's like sometimes it's kind of hard not to, you know. So this is kind of why, because I want like, I don't mind a worn looking book, so it's like I don't mind this too much, but I would want like my display versions. And it's like that's not the best thing to do in our current economy, like giving into like the capitalistic tendencies. But like, first off, those are so pretty. Second off, if I can support the artist and the author, I will. So that's my excuse. So anyway, the second note, chapter 6, which is Clothes Redder Than Maple, and then page 157. So, okay, so it's 157 going to 176, or 157, 175 to 176, which I'm just going to note there. So, Salon and Julien are talking about Hua Chang, and they're talking, like, Julien asked if Hua Chang has any kind of weakness, and Salon said his ashes. And then page 176, it starts off by saying, if one got a hold of ghost ashes, one could take command of a said ghost. If the ghost disobeyed, then by getting rid of the ashes, the ghost would dissolve and its soul disintegrate. This was common knowledge, but using it on Hua Chang seemed fruitless. And to just read verbatim here, Julien smiled. There's probably no one who can obtain his ashes, Hua Chang's ashes, and so that weakness is the same as having no weakness. You never know, the youth said. There are circumstances where a ghost voluntarily gives his ashes away. And then later on, the youth, who later introduces himself as Salon, says there are circumstances where a ghost would voluntarily give his ashes. I read that. And then he later goes on to say, there's a custom in the ghost realm where if a ghost has a special someone, they entrust their ashes to that person. Julien responds with, I didn't know the ghost realm had such a romantic practice. They do, the youth said, but not many dared practice it. And then Julien responds with, it is certainly painful to think about, to have given everything for love and lose it, and lose everything in return. And like, I thought that like, that's not something I quite remember from my first read of this. And honestly, like, it's so sweet. Like, that's a sweet practice, like, to give your ashes to someone. Like, I would want to do that if I really love someone. What if, I don't know if this goes into detail on a later thing, but like, it might not. But I wonder if you could give, like, I wonder if it would be a situation where it's like you would have to give like all of your ashes to that one person, or if you could give it to like 2-3 different people, because it's like there are a couple of like my really close friends that I could see giving my ashes, if I were a ghost, that I could see giving my ashes to them. So I wonder if you could give it to like a couple of different people, or if it would just have to be one person. Then the next note, the third note, page 204, chapter 7. I'm way ahead. There we go, we're getting close. So, I thought this one was it's very telling of Julien and his character. He's very humble, partly because he was always humble, and also partly too, he's ascended 3 times. So it's like, he's just to a point where it's like, he's not very confident isn't the right word. He's not very smug. So like, the villagers are talking about Julien and like saying a bunch of things he can do. And then it says, none of these villagers had actually seen him perform any miracles, but they had essentially taken him for a real god, and Julien didn't know what to say to that. Solve all problems, I definitely can't guarantee that. That's something that Julien thinks. And that was just kind of like a cute little scene, because it's like, I feel it's a cute little scene because like Julien is very humble, self-deprecating as well, and I feel like there's a lot of situations in which that happens, where it's like, you may not personally see someone like perform a miracle or do something like really, really good, but if like enough people say that, then you start believing it. So that kind of a deal. And then the last one I want to talk about is on page 355, chapter 11, once I get to it. One moment. Okay, I just needed some water. So this is like the start of chapter 11, the first page in chapter 11. So at this point, Julien knows Salon is Huateng, and Salon calls Julien Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince, and he's just like, it feels a little bit different. It's the first time I've heard you address me like that. It feels a little bit different. And then the 2 paragraphs kind of near the bottom, the 3rd paragraph from the bottom, and then the 2nd paragraph from the bottom. When others called him Your Highness, some were emotionless and all business, like Li Yuan. But most of the time, when people called him Your Highness, it was laced with a sense of disdain, like how one would intentionally address an ugly woman as a beauty, somewhat sarcastic. Yet when Huateng called him Your Highness, the 2 words were uttered with with grave sincerity. So while it was hard to describe, Julien felt that when Huateng called him Your Highness, it was different from when others called him that title. So that was just like I feel like that's such a sweet little nod. I feel like it speaks a lot on a lot of different levels to their history, even though, you know, I mean, I know of that history as of right now because I watched the Donghua, but at this point we don't know. But I feel like that kind of is a good sense of foreshadowing, like the fact that he's like a ghost king and so feared, and yet he's calling Julien one of the less respected gods. The fact that Hua Cheng is calling him Your Highness with such reverence, I feel like that is a bit of foreshadowing there, and not just that I feel like it is. So, good start to the series, a very good start to the series. I'm very happy. I gave this like 5 stars on Goodreads, not on Goodreads, I do not use Goodreads anymore. I gave it 5 stars on Fable and then the StoryGraph. And now we're moving on to volume 2, which is this one. Now, to give you I don't think I gave you the description for volume 1. Is what it is. So the description for this one, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. And this is where we'll start getting a little bit spoilery. The touch of a hand, a roll of a dice. Julia has confirmed that the bewitching youth, Salong, is actually Hua Cheng, one of the 4 calamities and a supreme ghost despised by all heavenly officials. Still, he has trouble matching the terror of his companion's reputation with the charming, clever, and protective young man he's come to know. When a distress signal leads Julia into Ghost City, a bustling metropolis containing all the horrors and delights of the dead, he sees Hua Cheng in his element, and his true form, for the first time. But despite their chemistry and care for one another, there are missions to fulfill and secrets to uncover, and Julian's centuries of troubled history are never far behind. So that's where we're at. I kind of know what portion of the Donghua this is. So it's like I kind of know what to expect from this volume, and plus I've read it before, so it's like I know what to expect here. One, I mean, it's the minorest of quips, is that, well, it's like 2 very, 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 never mind. So it's just 1 actually. Yeah, it's just 1. One very minor quip is that the chapters, I mean, again, it's not a huge deal, and because it's a series, like, it kind of makes sense, but like the chapters, it starts off with chapter 12. Again, it's like a very minor detail, and part of me does appreciate that it picks up, like, chapter 11 ends volume 1, chapter 12 picks us up, and this one, but also kind of, I don't know why it annoys me. I don't have a good reason why, which is why I'm saying it's a very minor quip. At the end of the day, not that big of a deal. So I will update you all when I am at the end of this one. And also, really quickly, I want to take a minute to appreciate some of the artwork. Like, that is the full look of the full image of the front cover. Like, I love the artwork in this so much. It's just so perfect. So I will give you an update when I finish volume 2. So I have finished Heaven Official's Blessing volume 2, and I have a couple of little notes. My ring light might die in a little bit, so I might as well just charge that. Anyway, so I have finished, there we go, that somewhat helps. Weird angle though, whatever. I have finished Heaven Official's Blessing volume 2, like I said, and I know I mentioned earlier about having like my notes down below in the description, but then again, decided not to. Just because it's like, I don't want it to, like, if it's not something, if you haven't gotten around to reading a certain volume or a certain chapter in a certain volume, I don't want it to be like there, you know, in the description if you're like saving this video for later. So this is going to be spoilery, but it's not going to be spoilery in the description. So volume 2, my first note is chapter 12, so like the first chapter of volume 2, pages 15 through 16. So basically in their scene, I was just reading through it a little bit. Basically in their scene, we're at a point where like the heavenly officials are kind of starting to realize that maybe Jillian is friends with Hua Cheng. And And they're all headed to the Palace of Divine Might to meet with the Emperor. Zhenwu, I think his name is Zhenwu. Let me just check. Is it in here? Is the characters in here? Maybe it's earlier than this. Name guide. Nope. Kingdom of Zhenwu. Yeah, okay. Zhenwu. Yeah. So that's the Emperor, and they're about to go meet the Emperor about what happened in Banyu Pass. And basically some of them are talking, and suddenly someone commented, "It's not just a small world. Take a look at the," and they're talking about the Prince of Yong'an, and then the Prince of Jianle. So Jilian, and then who's the Prince of Yong'an? Which one? Okay. I'll recognize. Oop, here, wait. Yeah. So it's a Long Qingqiu. I'm totally mispronouncing it. But the Prince of Heavenly Title Taihua. So they're talking about Jianle and Taihua. And suddenly someone commented, "It's not just a small world. Take a look at those two." I don't like to make comparisons, but even though they're both crown princes, His Highness Taihua is truly noble. He would never do anything shameful like that, even if he fell from grace. The kingdom of Yong'an was more prosperous than the kingdom of Jianle, and so of course the crown prince of Yong'an is stronger than that of Jianle. How the grass grows depends on the land it grows. Simple logic. So it's like the situation with Banyu Pass, and some of the gods mentioning, some of the people mentioning how there was a young man clothed in red there, and the only real prominent person that they all know of who wears red is Huacheng. I'm blanking on what his title is. Where are you, Huacheng? Okay, Crimson Rain Saltflower. There we go. It's for Queen Lady's title. So like he's the only one that they know of that they can think of who wears red, and it's like, and plus two with some of the injuries that the one avatar of General Pei Jr. got, so it's like it's kind of him. And then on page 16 it says the kingdom of Yong'an was the country that overtook Jianle after its fall, and the founder of Yong'an was the rebel general who successfully overthrew the imperial capital of Jianle. As heaven officials, it was inevitable that they would run into each other, so he didn't think much of it, Jilian. Those gossiping junior officials, while they were supposedly whispering, weren't particularly quiet. But since this was Jilian, they spoke without fear of him hearing. Perhaps they even found the prospect exciting. So Jilian pretended to have heard nothing and casually walked away. So it's just, I feel like that's like part of the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because I feel like we're so prone to gossiping when it's like, you know, sometimes it just is what it is. Like one kingdom overtook another. So it's like, and also too, it's like they just have all these assumptions about Huacheng, which Jilian doesn't like, which kind of points me to my next one, I think. Page 39 in the same chapter. If I can get to it on my way. Okay, so it's not this quote, but there's, I think it was a quote in this one, chapter 13, page 46. Okay. 103. Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure where I remember that quote, but Julian is just saying like it kind of doesn't matter what like he had to do. It's like it doesn't change my relationship with him and how he's treated me. And it's kind of, I think it's called cognitive dissonance, where I think I talked about it here before, but essentially it's like you can have two things be equal, and of course there are certain things where cognitive dissonance should not be applied. Like there are two things that can be equal. You can have differing opinions yet still be friends. You can have differing opinions yet still respect the other person's opinion. And like I said, there are times and places where you should not apply this, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, my relationship with him, how I see him, and kind of knowing what Julian knows from what Hua Chang has said about his past up until this point in this book. It's like, yeah, like not judging a book by its cover, which I talked about in another video. But another one I wanted to comment is that Junwoo, the emperor, he's sending Julian to the ghost city, basically Hua Chang's realm, and then he asks Julian who he wants to be paired with for the mission. I mean, like, who do you want to work with? Like, I'm leaving it up to you. And then Julian says, like, preferably someone easy to work with, and like I don't really have a preference. Someone who knows me, who I can get along well. That's his only real preference. And then the emperor proposes the Windmaster. And at this point in time, Julian thinks that the Windmaster is a woman. And so, and because like everyone talks about the Lord Windmaster neutrally, a lot of the gods are spoken of neutrally, without gendered pronouns. Or not even without, just like kind of without pronouns. Well, not without pronouns, but so basically the emperor says the Windmaster is powerful, a lively person who enjoys making friends, and thus matches your first condition of easy to get along with. When reporting in with me, the Windmaster also spoke well of you. I think he too will be fine. If you do not have any other questions, then descend with the Windmaster and go forth to investigate Ghost City. So it's like they don't really talk about each other. If anything, they would say they, or like if anything, like I said, they'll say they, or just say Lord Windmaster, use like their appropriate title. And like I think I said this in my watches of Heaven Official's Blessing, but Windmaster, she Qingxuan, I think it's pronounced Qingxuan. Probably butchering that a little bit, but my whole theory is that if they're powerful enough, we kind of learn in this novel that if they're powerful enough, the gods can change between forms of male and female. They can go back and forth, and you see Windmaster do that, you see Earthmaster do that at Banyue Pass, where they're in the feminine form, and then you see Earthmaster, this is slightly spoilery, but you see Earthmaster at the Ghost City in, I mean, I guess it's not so much of a spoiler, but you see Earthmaster in Ghost City. It's not a spoiler for this book. You see Earthmaster in Ghost City as a male, so it's like they kind of go back and forth. And Windmaster, I feel like, is the one who's the most comfortable going back and forth, and it's partly to do with the fact that a lot of their statues have been feminine and have been female statues, because like it explains how in Windmaster and Watermaster, so Windmaster's brother, how they're often worshipped together in the same temple, and Watermaster was always worship as male, and then there was a slight power balance. The mortals felt like there was a slight power balance, that there needed to be both male and female. So Windmaster, a lot of Windmaster's statues were made into female statues. And because of that, Windmaster's powers are a lot stronger in the feminine form, which Windmaster says. And it's just, so there's that whole explanation there. So it's like, but I feel like part of it's that, but I also just feel like you kind of get the hint that just Windmaster is just very comfortable just going back and forth between the genders. And that's kind of why I get the feeling that Windmaster is gender fluid, or at least most gender fluid amongst the gods who can go back and forth between genders. So that's my thoughts, my opinions. And then page 46, the next one I want to talk about, 46. Yeah, so that's what I was just talking about. Windmaster says, I'm actually more powerful in this form, referring to her feminine form, their feminine form. So, and then that's what I was talking about. And then page 103, getting to there. 103. And then something that I just thought was really sweet was Hua Cheng and Jilian are talking, and Hua Cheng had asked, like, so are you here to only to visit with me? And Jilian kind of pauses, like because he's not there to see Hua Cheng, he's there to figure out who sent the distress signal of like a fire dragon, since that's like a desperate last minute attempt measure to call for help from like a heavenly official. And so Hua Cheng kind of gets the implication like, okay, he's not here to see me. And then Hua Cheng says, whether you're here to see me or not, I'm happy either way. And then it goes on to say, Jilian was startled by those words. He hadn't had a chance to respond before the women standing on the side started giggling. Hua Cheng inclined his head, and they all stopped at once, their heads bowed low. They soon filed out of the hall, leaving only the two of them in this massive chamber. So it's like, I think part of the reason why I like this series so much is because it's showing a healthy dynamic, and it's showing healthy masculinity, both with the relationship between Hua Cheng and Jilian, and showing healthy masculinity in their relationship and in themselves as characters, as individual characters. But it also shows like not toxic masculinity. There is some, but it shows like healthy masculinity in the form of Windmaster, because like Windmaster is very, when in the male form, like very masculine, like very sure of himself, very confident, but also very polite, very understanding. And then when Windmaster's in their female form, it's like still very confident, but it's like the fact that Windmaster is so comfortable going back and forth. It's like, look, women are very strong, and I'm more powerful in this form. And like I said before, part of that is how Windmaster statues were built more as women and predominantly as female statues. But it's just like, there's such an easy acknowledgement on Windmaster's part of being like, yeah, it's more powerful. Like, there's no shame in having your female counterpart to yourself be more powerful than your masculine side. So it's just like healthy masculinity. I think that's why I'm liking this so much. And again, there is some toxic masculinity in here. I'm not going to quite divulge why, just because I didn't mention it in any of the notes. But there's so much healthy masculinity in this series that I'm like, I think it's good. So I am now moving on to volume 3, and with this one, I'll start giving descriptions for these now. This one, something to fight for, someone to live for. God should never meddle in the affairs of mortals, but Julien is not one to follow the rules when lives are at risk. He spits in the face of heaven and its laws and descends in a fury to save his country from drought and civil war. Yet this golden child gets a harsh dose of reality when he discovers just how little one individual, even a god, can do to save a crumbling nation. As the people reject and betray him, one young soldier stands by Julien, a boy with a face wrapped in bandages and a fierce loyalty in his heart. In this chaotic past, can an unshakable bond grow from the ashes of unimaginable destruction. So I kind of know where this comes. I kind of know. I am slightly spoiled for the series, which is also why I just decided to get it over with. So it's like, it is what it is. I'm not upset. I'm not upset by the spoilers. It's just like I was looking at some of them just to kind of know what would happen to certain characters. If you know, you know. But this is the main inside art that inspired the cover, or is the cover. And then here is another little, where's my thingy? There we are. Another little inside art. And I think I've showed this before, but where's my thingy? This is the volume I had signed by the artist who did the inside artwork. So, in Interior Illustrations by Zelda CW, I got this signed at Anime Expo 2024. Yep. By Zelda CW. So, I am treasuring this. Maybe I'll get all of my books signed by her. So, I am starting volume 3, and we're just slowly chugging along. Slowly moving along with the series. And let me know. I mean, I might have already started by the time this video is up, but if I should start reading more of Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, Maudu Jushi, if I should start reading more of this and collecting like these volumes at least, let me know down below in the comments. Again, I'm not sure where I'm at with collecting these ones at the time this video is up, but I probably have started. But let me know if... It was really funny because I was at Disneyland the other day, and for Oogie Boogie Bash, which was on Thursday, I saw 2 cosplayers doing this couple. And I was like, oh my god. I was telling my sister, I was like, look, they're from that one. I couldn't think of the title at the time, but I was like, they're from that one. And Melissa, my sister, was like, oh yeah, this one. So yeah, moving on to volume 3, and I'll give you an update when I'm done with the book. Okay, so I had initially recorded this update, and then when I wasn't quite watching it back, but like I'd edited a little, very slightly, and then maybe an hour later, after I initially recorded this update, I realized I said the wrong volume during the entire time of talking about the specific volume I'm reading. I was saying the wrong volume. And then when I gave like my updated plans for this reading vlog, I said the right volume, but in talking about the actual volume I'm reading, I was saying the wrong volume. So I needed to re-record this. Because like I was going through it. What it was is that I was going through this, and I was going through volumes 3 and 4 just to kind of like refresh what happens in volume 4 since I've already read them. And I was like, wait a second, when I recorded the update, I was saying the wrong volume. So here we are. I am about halfway through. I was referring to this as volume 4, and then I looked over at my shelf and was going through volume 4. I was like, wait a second. Anyway, I'm halfway through volume 3. This is volume 3. And so far, like, I'm still really enjoying the story. There are lots of parts of it that are beginning to get heart-wrenching. Yeah, and the artwork is just stunning as usual, and I'm in love with the story. Again, I'm halfway through it, so I'm not going to give like a full update right now until I finish it, but the update for the reading vlog is that because this is getting on the longer side, and that is something that I've been exploring, kind of testing out a little bit, doing longer reading vlogs. That is something I've been doing, so I don't mind that this is closer to an hour. However, since I'm still kind of in the testing phase, I don't want it to get longer than that, or I don't want it to get too much longer than that. And so what this reading vlog is going to be is the first four volumes of Heaven Official's Blessing. So this is going to be part 1, as you can tell from the title. This is part 1, and like I just said, it's the first 4 volumes. So my reread of this read-through vlog is the reread part. And then part 2, which will be up next week, will be the newer reads. And so just forewarning going into this, and especially going into next week's, if you have not read past volume 4, next week is going to be spoilery in regards to volume 5 through volume 8. And I'm like, kind of like with this video, I'm not going to really gatekeep what I'm talking about, although I'm not going to gatekeep what I'm talking about, but I'm also not going to hold back if there's something I really need to talk about, or I really feel like I want to talk about. I'm not going to hold back, but I'm also not going to be super spoilery in what I'm talking about, what I'm discussing. But just know, especially for next week's, it will be really in spoiler territory because it will be volume 5 and on. So just, I wanted to get that out there. Again, I'm halfway through volume 3, so we'll be finishing up this one and then reading volume 4 in this reading vlog. And then, like I said, next week's will be volume 5 through volume 8. So that's my update. I just wanted to get that out of the way before I forgot about it. And part 2 will be linked down below in the description, so you can go check that out. Again, it's currently linked, but it's not going to be available to watch until next week. And then in next week's video, in part 2, this video will be linked. So with all that said, I'll see you all in the official update for volume 3. Okay, so quick update since I finally finished volume 3. I did breeze I did breeze through this one pretty quickly because, again, it is one of the ones I've read. I am honestly just, I don't have too many notes about this one, or I do have some things I want to talk about, but just overall I don't have too many commentaries about this one, just because we are kind of in the midst of the story and we're really getting a lot of things coming to a head with this story. And my notes, the things I want to talk about, are at the beginning of, within like the first 3 chapters. So like, the first one I want to talk about is in chapter 28 on page 19. Again, it's the paperbacks. And it's basically talking about how there were so many temples that were raised after Julien had ascended, and like there were so many that just got raised. And after he ascended, one person is saying, "This must be your first time at a palace of Jianle. All palaces of Jianle are like this." But the next part of this quote, what this person is saying, is what I wanted to focus on. I heard that after His Highness ascended, he sent dreams to many temple donors and to this very temple's master, telling them not to have devotees prostrate. So none of the crown prince temples have places to do so. And I feel like that's really kind of like a very interesting take about it, because in so many places, prostrating yourself in one regard or another, whether it's kneeling, whether it's fully going on the floor, in some capacity, whether, like I said, whether it's just on your knees or fully prostrating yourself on the floor fully, is seen as a sign of respect. And in some cultures and some beliefs, it is seen as a sign of great respect and great devotion. So I think it's like, I feel like that's such a great little nod to have in there, to have a character like a god, to be like, hey, you don't have to prostrate yourself, Because like if you're thinking of like people who aren't as able-bodied, who can't go, like I am perfectly able-bodied. I have bad knees, so sometimes it is a little bit awkward walking around. I can still do it just fine, but sometimes my knees will, or a lot of times if I'm walking around too much, my knees will hurt. Or if I'm doing some things that are a little bit awkward on my knees will hurt afterwards. So it's like, but again, I'm perfectly able-bodied. I'm not complaining, and in comparison to how other people, that in comparison to the health issues that other people have to deal with, like my knee issues are very minor. But getting back on track, like it can be kind of hard for some people with mobility issues and health issues to fully get down on their knees, to fully prostrate themselves. And I feel like that's such a great consideration to have, because it's like, hey, it's just because you can't kneel or fully prostrate yourself doesn't make you any less devoted than someone who can. So I feel like that was a good little nod to have in there for a character, for a god to do, for a heavenly official to do. The next two I wanted to talk about are kind of connected. So 33 and then 40. I want to talk about them I want to mention them at the same time. Okay, so I wanted to talk about them because of our current socioeconomic and political, socio and economic society, however you want to phrase that. Society, our current socioeconomic and political atmospheres. The first quote is in chapter 29 on page 33, and Mu-Ching was looking into something that Jillian had asked them to look into, and Mu-Ching was saying Yong'an has never been a wealthy place. Their temples and shrines are few in number. It seems they also have a local rule where those who don't offer donations can't pray. So those who've visited the temple of the Crown Prince have all been wealthy. The suffering poor can't even enter. And I know at like some of my schools, like I grew up in private Catholic schools, and a lot of the emphasis was on how much parents would donate. And there's a teacher who still works at my elementary and junior high, like a decade later, still works there, and she'd been working there for like years before I even went there. So she's been working there for at least 3 decades. And she had her obvious favorites. Like 9 times out of 10 it was boys, and then also she would be nicer to kids of families who had donated a lot. So there was that where it's like, if the family can't donate as much, like it's not that she was like unfriendly or mean, it was just like there was obvious favoritism and preference towards people who could donate. So and that's still the case. I know someone whose kids go there, and it's still the case 10 years later. 10 years later, a little over 10 years later, still the same. And then the next quote is chapter 30, page 40, and it says, when funds go through government checkpoints, each checkpoint skims off a little bit to line their own pockets until finally there's nothing left. Of course it's so serious. If it were up to me, I would have preferred not to send anything at all rather than feed those parasites. And again, I feel like both of these quotes kind of intertwine with like that. People would rather take the money for themselves. Government officials would rather take money for themselves than feed people who are starving. So I feel like rereading these first 4 volumes now is such kind of like, it brings into contrast. It brings into clarity, like what exactly is going on. It kind of helps gives an example of everything that's going on. So yeah, I think I got some mosquito bites when I stepped outside. So I finished volume 3, and now we are finally on to volume 4. And as usual, to take time, like I hardly appreciate like the inner flap parts, but that is so pretty. And then to just appreciate the inner artwork cover, the inner artwork. So, like I had mentioned earlier, I like keeping track of like where I'm at within the chapters and the pages. So, like I had mentioned earlier, there was the glossary part, because I also like having that handy. Okay, I'm gonna have it. So I like using the inner flaps to kind of help me keep track of the chapters, the contents, and then also the characters and just the little glossary section. So we are now officially on to volume 4. Let me put my bookmark in, and like I had mentioned earlier, is this, once I finish up this volume, that will be the end of this specific video, the specific parts, and then part 2 will be going up next week. And I've mentioned it in other videos that I'm currently recording. I kind of don't know when this will be up. I'll have a better idea of when this will be up. And as of right now, I'm not sure when part 2 will be up, just because I don't know when this will be up. But part 2 is linked down below in the description. So that will be up the following Friday after this is up. And then I have one other video kind of related to this, where I'm basically talking about everything else that I read during my read through of Heaven Official's Blessing. And that video will be up after part 2. So the Friday following part 2. So in 2 weeks roughly. I'm looking up at my calendar like I know the exact date. I don't. But it'll be linked down below in the description. Okay, so we are at the end of this video. I just had to give you an update on volume 4. And then, like I've mentioned previously, next week's video, part 2, will be volumes 5 through 8. So this was, I don't have too many like notes, just because I was like, part of it was that I was just trying to get through it. But I was just like so into this story that like, I think I do have like a couple of highlights in like the first, like like 4 chapters, I think, between chapters 52 and 55. So those first 4 chapters, I do have some highlights in there. Nothing really like of major note. And honestly, like, before I really get too much into it, like the Blackwater arc, like the Windmaster, he is my favorite character. Like I've talked about it before, like Windmaster is my favorite character. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on how to pronounce it. One moment, let me look it up. So Xuan, I'm so not pronouncing this right. I feel so bad. I'm trying. But the Windmaster, like, he's my favorite character and I love him so much. And just reading through the Blackwater arc was so hard. And I know that, like, one of the plot points that I am aware of, just, I ended up being aware of it just by no fault of like spoilers or like any, well, probably spoilers, but the fault of spoilers. It was more like unintentional figuring it out. I know that Windmaster does not ascend again. And I mean, part of it is the fact that I like Windmaster and he was one of my favorite characters. I kind of don't like how that didn't happen. Like, or not that that didn't happen, but that there wasn't some consolation prize, I guess you could call it, because after everything, and like I know bits and pieces of what happens in volumes 5 through 8, so like after everything, it's like even if the Windmaster never ascended again, like I feel like there needed to be something there, some recognition there. That's just a me thing, and again, that is for later in the series. For volume 4, Blackwater arc, like I said, was really hard to get through, and a large part of it is because of how much I liked Windmaster, how much I like him, but it's also partly with how hard Julien and Hwa-Chang were trying to help Windmaster, and like we don't really get as right now, we don't really have a solid answer about the Earth Master or the Water Master. Like, we don't have anything solid, which might happen later on. I kind of doubt it. Yeah, so far I don't think, I was just looking over the premise for volume 5. I don't think we get any solid answers as to what happened to the other 3 elementals. So, or the other 2 elementals, the 2 main ones, the water and earth. Which is kind of a bummer in my opinion, but it's not that things need to be wrapped up nicely, but it's like, with how the Blackwater arc was, like, I kind of would have liked some resolution, at least somewhere, beyond the fact that Windmaster is just forever human and can't ascend again, and that we don't really know what happened to the Water Master or what happened to the Earth Master, or who killed the Earth Master. So I only have like 2 notes I really want to talk about. I will say that the dice game was really funny. Like, the artwork, perfection. Where's my first? Page 11 to 12. Why did I have this one? Okay, so this is like the very start of the book, and they're talking about like the different fire socials. And a bloody fire social is very rare, and I guess it like varies from locale to locale, town to town. Since the performances are gruesome and unusual, and the makeup artistry is a trade secret, there are fewer and fewer of them every year. So that's what Julien says, because it's like, hey, like, this isn't, it's makeup, it's special effects, basically. I went too far ahead. Oh, wait. That was not the one I wanted to respond to. Oopsies. But I did like the note of like having such vivid special effects and without necessarily needing, I mean, it's a trade secret, not necessarily needing too much for it to look realistic. Okay, so chapter 52, pages 11 through 12, they're talking about something potentially meddling, and at this point, like by the end of volume 4, you kind of know it was you know it was Lord Earthmaster, or the imposter. And basically they're talking about how they're not at their destination, and they're talking about like, hey, we might have noticed, and one of the paragraphs says, wouldn't they have noticed if there was anyone or anything extra, and if someone among them had meddled in the darkness, who was most likely the culprits? Hwa-Chang kind of jokingly says, personally, I think Lord Earthmaster is the most suspicious one here, don't you agree? And he's the one who made it, you know, so it's a little bit more suspicious. And Windmaster's quick to kind of step in and be like, look, I know you two quarreled in the past, but Ming Jung really isn't like that. I dragged him on this expedition at the last minute to help me, so he has no reason to meddle. And then Hua Cheng responds with, one doesn't always need a reason to do something, which is true, but I think what Windmaster says, like, I dragged him on this expedition at the last minute to help me, I feel like that is also good enough reason, even though, like, Windmaster says, like, oh, like, he has no reason. That itself is good enough reason. Okay. So it's like everyone is a little bit suspicious, but then they're like, hey, we can't start turning on each other. And then it was also pointed out that someone else might have also been drawing an array, a transport array, and the Windmaster had cast an isolation spell to seal the shrine to prevent Chiurong from listening at the door and eavesdropping on their discussion. But that spell also made it hard for those on the inside to easily detect whether someone was tampering with things outside. When two similar spells collide, the more powerful one always won, and power wasn't solely based on the caster's ability. It also depended on the materials used when spell crafting. So I think that was like really important, because it's like it takes away attention from the Windmaster being like, okay, so there are other things that could be at play that we wouldn't have sensed, because the isolation spell would make it hard for people to listen in, but it made it hard for them to hear anything going on outside. So it's like that kind of worked in Earthmaster's benefit, the imposter. So chapter 65 to 61 is the other one I wanted to talk about, so it's a little bit later. It's the very end of, this was just like a little scene that I really appreciated. It's the end of chapter 65. And, well, okay, not a sweet moment. But they're talking, like, they're finally figuring out that this was an imposter, and they know that Earthmaster is dead. And, and Hua Cheng says that's why he impersonated the real Earthmaster and infiltrated the heavens to investigate. Pretty brave, if I must say so myself. And then Ji Liang says, worthy to be called brave and astute indeed, if only he hadn't killed the real Earthmaster and dragged over 200 fishermen into his mess. However, Hua Cheng had to correct him on this point. I don't know if he's the one who killed the real Earthmaster, but I'm afraid someone else dragged those fishermen into the storm out on the East Sea. So it's like at this point there's just so much coming to a head, and just so much is going on that it's kind of hard to say who's done what and why. Which I think it's like good that he points out. It's like, hey, he may have killed Earthmaster, he may not have, but I don't think he was the one who took those people out to sea. And then like the very end with the scene on the jade table, all of that. Lovinny's going crazy a little bit. So that's volume 4, and also at the point in time that I'm recording this, I went to Barnes & Noble the day before, and that's in my birthday reading vlog, which is linked down below in the description. I got volume 1 of the hardcover edition for Heaven Official Blessing. It was so pretty. I'm going to be slowly collecting these hardcover editions, and I did talk in my birthday reading vlog video about how like I, like many other people, are susceptible to special editions, varying editions if they're pretty enough. So it's like this is one for me at least, I feel like if you're gonna get a special edition, then there needs to be it needs to be like within the bounds of reason and meaning, that it has to be a series you really, really, really enjoy. or from an author you really, really, really enjoy, because it's like at this point with how the publishing industry is with publishing and coming out with various different editions, it's much harder to say that the editions coming out are special editions because of how many editions are coming out, of how many editions with sprayed edges, with glossy covers, with different covers, with bonus chapters, with artwork inside. It's like, it's so hard to say that something's a special edition just because it has extra artwork or a certain style of sprayed edges or artwork on the edges. So it's like, at this point, like for me, it makes sense for Lord of the Rings because I love Lord of the Rings. It makes sense for Heaven Official's Blessing, even though I haven't finished it yet. That'll happen next week. It makes sense for Heaven Official's Blessing because I love it so much, and it's just very heart-wrenching for me. So Heaven Official's Blessing makes sense for me. Whereas, like, if I were to look at what's another series, if I were to look at like the Never After novels by Emily McIntyre, for me those ones don't make as much sense to get special editions or the unique editions of those, quote unquote, because I like that series. I really did like it, but it's just not something that captured my attention the way the Middle Earth books did or the way Heaven Official's Blessing has. So it's like, it's hard to say that a special edition it's hard to say that a special edition is an actual special edition with how much publishers are pumping out various editions for various books. So that's just my 2 cents on it. But to wrap this video up, I will next week be going into volume 5 through 8 for Heaven Official's Blessing, and we're gonna hopefully end on a mostly happy note for this series. So everything is down below in the description, and links are down below. One moment. Anyway, I'll figure stuff out. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video in part 2 next week.